photos are known only as the Three Tramps.
They started snapping pictures right about here.
This is Chauncey Holt, a career criminal now living in California. Holt claims that he is this man, the tramp in the hat.
This is the story of Chauncey Marvin Holt, a longtime contract agent for the Central Intelligence Agency and a Mafia associate. You're about to see the interview conducted with Mr. Holt just 8 days before he died. This is his story.
Very few people know the incestuous relationship that existed and probably exists at the moment between these various very powerful elements: organized crime, intelligence community, the political and powerful business. I felt that the American public had a right to know as many of the details that I have available. I grew up in southern Kentucky where bootlegging was a way of life. I mean, it was probably the most important crop, just like marijuana is in certain counties now. And it was nothing unusual about bootlegging because when the Scotch-Irish immigrants came to Kentucky in the early part of the 17th century, they brought their stills with them. And whiskey making was one of their skills, and they always did it.
For the young Chauncey, there was no stigma attached to being a bootlegger.
Not only, distilled the whiskey, what we delivered it, usually to somewhere like Knoxville, Tennessee, which was close, about 40 miles, and we was as far away as Cincinnati.
Chauncey Holt got around, and getting around got him in trouble. He ended up in reform school in Chillicothe, Ohio.
Now they have prisons for youthful offenders. That was what it would have been in those days, but they called it a reform school. And I'd been in there I got railroaded by the FBI for joyriding in a car. That was Hoover's big thing in those days, was catching youthful car thieves. Usually someone else caught them and they took the credit. And although we were right in the middle of the war, I mean, Hoover took the time to send wire after wire down to Louisville wanting to know why we hadn't been prosecuted. Gives you an idea what importance he placed on those type things.
This teletype, April 23rd, 1942, from Hoover to FBI Louisville office says, in part, Chauncey Marvin Holt et al. Advised by return teletype status prosecution of this case. In the event final prosecution complete, submit report immediately reflecting results of prosecution. It's signed Hoover.
While I was there, I met several people that were connected with organized crime. So he said, if you want, I'll put you in touch with these guys in Baltimore who work hand in glove with Meyer Lansky. One was Cy Bloom and his brother Morris. Cy Bloom handled all the bookmaking operations for Lansky in the Baltimore area. And then it was through that connection that he came down to, Lansky came down to Baltimore to visit with Cy Bloom and to see his son Buddy Lansky, who at that time was in the Phipps Clinic. He was disabled. He's in the Phipps Clinic, and I knew him. I had gotten acquainted with him, with Buddy, and we used to go over and play chess with him and that sort of thing, because I was doing some painting work for the restoring a painting right across the street.
Chauncey Holt's skills as a painter would serve him well. A Renaissance man, he developed other skills. He became an arms expert in the military, as well as learning how to fly an airplane. Holt also did another kind of flying, but not inside a cockpit.
My uncle, by marriage, owned a small one-ring circus. And from the time I was 6 years old, I mean, I was running up and down the tight wire, you know, swinging on the trapeze. I worked so I worked in this family circus. And I did a single trapeze act, I worked in a flying act, I did a low wire act, a high wire act, shot from the cannon, all that sort of thing, you know.
The circus performer in Chauncey Holt thought getting shot out of a cannon was a hell of a lot safer and easier than getting shot at. Chauncey's Baltimore connection with Meyer Lansky would lead to a long relationship with the mobster and other important mob figures, including the head of the Detroit family, Peter Licavoli.
I did a little work for him in painting. He sent some paintings over to me to be restored, and that started a relationship with Licavoli that lasted, it lasted 50 years. It lasted from 44 until the date of his death in 1984. I had a lot of other qualities that they liked. First of all, I was a pilot. Secondly, I was a very good shooter. I was a weapons expert. And of course the art didn't help. It didn't hurt because it extended to forgery if necessary. And of course I was a very good accountant, very good money manager, and probably I did more money managing and more fiscal type work down through the years than I did the other types of work.
Chauncey's math skills, he was brilliant with figures, caught Meyer Lansky's attention.
So Lansky was coming down to Baltimore to see Buddy, and he was going to check up on the operation. The bookmaking operation, and Cy Bloom called me. I was working in the shipyard. He called me and asked me if I'd like to come over and meet Meyer Lansky. So he told Meyer Lansky that I was a mathematical genius. Well, I may have seemed like a mathematical genius to him, but anyway, so Lansky came in and we were talking, and it turned out that he was like me in the sense that he used to work mathematical problems just like he'd work a crossword puzzle. He'd get a book with nothing but problems in it, mostly algebraic problems. So he said, I want to work out this little problem for you, and you show me the fallacy in it, because you start out with the premise and you end up and it looks like 2 equals 1. So we go down through these equations, and it started out with A equals B. Well, down in the middle of this computation, you divide by A minus B. Well, if A equals B, A minus B is 0. So I pointed it out, and I said, there's a fallacy. And he said, oh yeah, that's right. He says, anything divided by 0, the answer is 0. And so I told him, well, technically he was wrong.
School book depository. The lot was swarming with faces he knew from days when he worked to help set up the CIA's Bay of Pigs invasion. And he says he met 2 other men, the other tramps in the photograph. This man he knew only as Montoya. But this man, he says, he knew well. His name was Charles Harrelson.
He said to me, "Are you O'Malley?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "I'm Harrelson."
Charles Harrelson was a contract killer, now in prison for killing Texas federal judge John Wood. When arrested for Wood's killing, Harrelson claimed killing a judge was nothing to someone who had killed a president. Chauncey Holt says he'd been told to stay in the book depository parking lot, wait for some sort of incident, and if anything went wrong, he should run to a specific boxcar on a parked train. Then he heard shots and ran.
You could still hear that people yelling that the president had been shot. So I knew that we had been set up.
And there is more than just Holt's word. There is also his face.
It's just too close.
Lois Gibson is the Houston Police Department's forensic artist. She made comparisons of Holt and the tramp in the photographs.
This is just conclusive to me that that's the same man.
She also compared pictures of Charles Harrelson with the tramp photo. Again, a perfect match.
I'll stake my reputation on it for sure.
Chauncey Holt does not claim to know who shot Kennedy, but he says he is sure most of the shots did not come from the book depository, but came from close by, from the grassy knoll.
If I am believed, it would lay to rest these ideas that Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald were just nuts that passed in the night.
Chauncey Holt is a former contract agent for the CIA, and he was there that tragic day in Dallas in a train yard behind the grassy knoll. He heard the shots, 4, perhaps 5. He believes there were 2 shooters and that Lee Harvey Oswald was coerced.
You're going to assassinate the most powerful man in the world. You bring in a rifle that's slow, that's cumbersome. You only bring 3 shells. You're so confident that this is going to happen. When he was laying on the floor of the Dallas Police Department, dying, they tried to get a deathbed confession from him, and he still maintained that he didn't do the shooting.
Holt is consulted around the country on the subject. As an artist, this is only one of hundreds of pieces on Kennedy. He says the report won't end the controversy. Meantime, the Journal is asking the government to release the records on the assassination to, in its words, remove the final vestiges.
Several individuals have been wrongly accused of having been the tramps. Possibly some of them deserved to be accused of that or something else. And I specifically referred to someone like Frank Sturgis, who incidentally ran afoul of the law for something else and ended up in prison. Howard Hunt, that was falsely identified as the person that I claimed to be. You see there's a lot of mystery surrounding the assassination. I felt that my information is from a point of view that would probably, if I am believed, it would lay to rest these ideas that Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald were just nuts that passed in the night. And that I always felt a sympathy for Oswald. And I just don't feel it's right that he would be, or his children, should be stuck with that stigmatism, that's all.
Stations that sent out the cameras to videotape Oswald handing out his leaflets. So there is an involvement with Ochsner with
Ring circus. They called it a mud circus. You know.
A mud?
Yeah, well, that was the term they used for them. They were small one-ring circuses that played the small towns. You didn't get into the big towns. They played the small towns, and they had a little traveling sideshow that went with them. And they also had a flying circus that also traveled along with them. You know, it was just like a package deal. So I started out, of course, when I was 6, 7 years old, I started practicing on the tight wire, the high wire, the slack.
How does a child, your grandchild's 5 years old right now, how does a child start experimenting with the high wire? I mean, I can't really envision this. I've heard stories of how you'd walk all different sorts of things, and you were a very curious boy, right? You didn't really have any fear. But how does someone get developed into becoming a tight wire act?
Well, it wasn't so much as not having any fear. You had that fear. That fear was with you all the time and everything. But what it was it was a challenge. It gave you a rush. It gave you a feeling of exhilaration.
Oh, I bet it did.
That there's nothing like it, and it's extreme confidence in, hey, you know, nothing is going to happen, you know.
Mm-hmm.